It's the Michael Patrick Leahy Show, broadcasting live from downtown Nashville. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. We are broadcasting live from our studios in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. If you want to weigh in, our number is 615-649-8477, 615-649-8477. We know you're out there. We know you're listening. And the thing to do is give us a call. We'd like to hear from you. Also, you can reach us. You can reach me on X, formerly Twitter, Michael P. Leahy. Michael P. Leahy, that's me. You can watch us live. You can watch us live on YouTube, on the YouTube channel. And we're going to have some big channel announcements coming up in the new year. You'll see this show live and in living color in many, many, many platforms. Like, I don't know, all the platforms on the John Frederick Radio Network, right? Getter and Rumble and X Spaces, all that sort of stuff. It's a lot of interesting stuff, and we'll be very delighted to broaden our audience. Okay, we're going to do a little change of pace here, and we're going to talk about a topic that we've talked about before. It's been a little bit off the front burner, but it came back on the front burner when the rhino former governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker, I think he served like 2 or 3 terms. He's sort of a Mitt Romney type character. And when he left the governorship of Massachusetts, I mean, think about this. What kind of Republican actually gets elected in Massachusetts? Yeah, a Mitt Romney type Republican. Charlie Baker was governor. And his reward for serving as governor of Massachusetts was to become the head of the NCAA. And he and other witnesses were testifying in Washington about the ridiculous rules that allow biological men to compete with women. Yeah, I kid you not. Here is actually, we've got a couple clips from some senators we want to play right now. Here is Senator Ted Cruz, who is cross-examining a witness about the approach to allow men to play in college sports. Let me just say this. You never want to be cross-examined by Ted Cruz in any circumstance. He is a very sharp guy, former Solicitor General for the state of Texas, and one of the brightest guys around. Not exactly Mr. Warm and Fuzzy, but in terms of intellectual firepower, he's got it. Here we go. Here's clip 7. Ted Cruz asking some obvious questions.
I'm trying to get a yes or no. I'm not trying to get a speech. Is there a difference between women and men?
I think that there are definitions for biological sex.
Okay, so you're not answering that. Let me ask you this question then. Why do women's sports exist? If you can't define a difference between women and men, why not abolish women's sports and just tell little girls to swim with little boys and see who wins?
Oh, I'm simply saying that that sex is different
question,
than gender.
Why
and I do believe that women's sports have a great
exist?
value. I mean, Senator, I'll tell you right now.
Ms. Robinson, please answer the question I'm asking you.
Absolutely.
Why do women's sports exist?
I think that there are so many positive benefits to sports.
But
I mean,
why have a
talked
separate
about it here
category for
today.
women? If there's no difference between women and men, why to have women's sports?
I'm saying that there's a difference between sex and gender, and that the NCAA has rules in place, which they have for the last decade.
Mr. Chairman,
which
I would like to enter into the record an article from Duke Law called Comparing Athletic Performances for the Best Elite Women to Boys and Men. And it goes through examining in 2017 the top records for women in the world in various track and field events. So, for example, in the 100 meter, the top record for women in the world was 10.71 seconds. Now, that record for the number one woman in the world in 2017 was, in the year 2017, broken by 124 boys under 18. In that same year, the record for the number one competing woman in the 100-meter dash in the world was broken by a total of 2,474 men.
Yeah, kind of makes a point, doesn't it? Look, I have to say this about, so I was in high school when they started, in a little high school in upstate New York, when they started women's sports. And you would think, guys wouldn't support. Actually, all the guys that I was with we're very supportive of women's sports. And in fact, my little sister was on the very first girls basketball team in our little high school of Randolph, New York, and they're thriving since. It's been a long time, but the point is, the sports is great, but it's great when it's on a fair field of competition. It is not fair in any way for a biological man to compete with a woman. When you do that, you are destroying the opportunity for women and girls to compete in sports, period. And that's not fair at all, nor is it American. Look, if you want to figure out the way to go here, okay, if somebody says they're transgender, which is, a mental illness, but if they say that, they want to change, I'll tell you what you do. You have the men's division, you have the girls division, and you have the tranny division, right? Let them be let them compete for the tranny championship of X, Y, or Z. And what you'll find is that the records will be in highest in the men's division, and then in the tranny division, and then in the girls division. That's how it's all going to work out. Because the trannies, right? The trannies basically are, subpar male athletes, but they're better in terms of objective performance than all the women, and that's why they're winning all the competitions. It's terrible. It should stop. Josh Hawley was questioning Charles Baker, the aforementioned Rhino Republican governor of Massachusetts, who's now heading up the NCAA. We have that interaction right now. Here you go. Clip 3, Josh Hawley and Charles Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Baker, if I could just start with you. I confess I didn't understand your answer to Senator Kennedy's question about the safety of women in the sports of the NCAA overseas. Did you say the federal law requires the NCAA to permit biological men to play in women's sports?
No, I said there have been 5 cases in federal court in the past 18 months. And
okay, because I thought you told him that
federal judges sided with participation.
The reason the NCAA couldn't take a position on this, in fact, you have taken a position on it, you're affirmatively permitting biological men in women's sports, but you said to him it's because of federal law. There's no federal law that requires it, right? The relevant federal law is Title IX, is it not? You're familiar with Title IX.
If guidance on this issue from Title IX or guidance with respect to discrimination law would be
Title
important.
IX is already the law. Title IX says
federal judges have ruled on
it's 20 U.S.C. Section 1681A. By the way, let's just dispense with that canard. No federal court has ordered the NCAA to include biological men in women's sports, right?
Actually,
there's not a single case that has ordered the NCAA to do so, correct?
That's pretty much what they decided in the San
No, don't
Jose
say pretty
case.
much. We're talking about the law here.
Yes,
I know. And you actively dissembled to Senator Kennedy just a second ago. It's not true that the NCAA has been ordered by any court, number one. It's not true that federal law requires you to include biological males.
Okay, well, hold on just a minute here now. So this is the difference between an honest person, Josh Hawley, and a dishonest person, Charlie Baker, the head of the NCAA, because he's claiming that in this instance, he's claiming that the federal court ruled that they have to let men participate in women's sports. But notice what they're not doing here. What they're not doing, or what Charlie's not doing, he's not citing the case or the very specifics of the ruling. Let's continue here for just a second.
Title IX explicitly says, no person in the United States shall on the basis of sex be denied the benefits of any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. You are in court at this moment arguing that Title IX doesn't apply to the NCAA, which is astounding to me given the amount of money, federal money, the NCAA gets. But let me just ask you this.
Okay, so basically he's not letting them off the mat. Okay, but I will say, what's the clue here on this? The clue, the key to this element, the claim, Charlie Baker did not cite the court case nor the decision, which means he was, wait for it, dissembling. When we come back, I got some Elizabeth Warren gems for you. Back after this.
Hey there, this is Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of The Glock Store. As a proud sponsor of this show, you may have heard Michael Patrick Leahy mention us a few times over the past 4 years. But today, it's me on the radio telling you how pleased we are to be associated with Michael Patrick Leahy and his dedication to the highest levels of professional journalism. Michael Patrick Leahy has been threatened with jail time in bringing the true facts about that Nashville Covenant shooting to his listening audience. Michael Patrick Leahy, you keep doing what you're doing, and we here at the Glock Store will keep sponsoring your show for the good of Nashville and the entire country. And I'm personally inviting all of your listeners to come visit and shoot at the Glock Store. It's where Michael Patrick Leahy learned to shoot a gun for the first time and where he bought his own personal Glock 19. I'm Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of the Glock Store here in Nashville, just minutes from the airports, worth the drive from anywhere, and a proud sponsor of Michael Patrick Leahy and the Tennessee Star Report.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. Hey, I want to talk in this segment about the difference between the coming golden age of America and the relics of the past. What do I mean by that? Well, the golden age is sort of a resurrection of the new frontier. Of course, you may recall when John F. Kennedy was elected president in 1960, we launched the new frontier. There were no limits to what America could do. We could put a man on the moon, which we did within a decade. We could, open up civil rights for everyone. We could have great economic growth. And the new frontier was a great period of optimism and positivity and unity within the country. And that all changed on November 22nd, 1963, when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. And we entered into, a long period, 61 years, where those ideas perhaps were not as front and center as they should be. But now, with the election of Donald Trump and the mandate that he has, we are moving towards unity. We are moving towards a golden age. We are moving, thanks to Elon Musk, towards putting a man and a woman and a team on the moon, on the Mars rather, not just the moon, on Mars. That wasn't something that I thought was, great, until I saw that rocket coming down and landing beautifully, the booster just going right into those pincers in Starbase, Texas, right near McAllen, Texas, on the southeastern border of Texas. So the New World is sort of the traditional American set of values. That is fantastic. However, we still have a bunch of relics hanging around. And the relics keep doing the same thing that they've been doing for decades, which is wah, 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 Trump bad. And one of those relics is Pocahontas, right? Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, who, for a Harvard Law School professor, is not that bright. Let's be honest about it. And here she is whining and complaining about the friendship between Elon Musk and Donald Trump.
So think about it this way. Here is this man, richest man in the world, who has multiple companies. So he's got Tesla, the electric car maker. He's got X. He's got Neuralink. He's got SpaceX and a handful of other companies. Those companies are directly involved with the United States government. Millions and millions of dollars worth of government contracts, millions of touch points where there are rules that will affect those companies, like a $7,500 rebate for electric cars, investigations that are currently ongoing into the practices of each of those companies and, in some cases, into Mr. Musk himself. And here he is whispering into the ear of Donald Trump. So what is he whispering? Is he whispering, here are ways to help the American people? Or is he thinking through ways to make those companies richer, to back off the regulators, or to end any investigations into his work? This is conflicts of interest at a level that we have never before seen in this country. And it is critically important, first of all, that we call it out, and second, that we start to push back and say no. The American public has a right to know who's giving this kind of advice to Donald Trump. Someone who's helping the American people or just helping himself.
Wah, wah. Oh, she's so missing it, right? But that's because she's stuck in the past. She is stuck in the past world. Look, I'm going to send her the book. Might give her a little help because, you know, one of her leftist friends actually wrote it, Walter Isaacson, who's a very good writer, but a lefty. And but it sent her the biography of Elon Musk so she can understand how Elon Musk has created wealth and how he has resurrected American manufacturing. That would be a key. Also, we'll send to her the clip of Mark Andreessen talking about how Elon Musk runs 6 companies at the same time. He is, I would say, a throwback to the classic American entrepreneur who created the greatness of America. The Carnegie, who by the way himself was an immigrant from Scotland. The Cornelius Vanderbilt. Yes, I'm talking Cornelius, who was on the ball and consolidated the railroad industry. You have to be somebody who's focused on getting the job done. Here's the problem. Elon Musk is focused on getting the job done. That's why Tesla now is one of the most valuable companies in the world. That's why he is the leading provider of satellite launches with SpaceX. That's why it's SpaceX that's going to go up and rescue the astronauts that are stuck up there in the space station. That Boeing, right, that big lumbering monolith that just can't get the job done, Boeing can't do, right? So this is a different world. And I'm telling you, you know, Trump is actually considering getting rid of the $7,500 electric vehicle subsidy, which is a bad idea. The other electric vehicle manufacturers need it. I don't think Tesla does. You know, Roger Simon, who's on our show, just bought a Tesla, and he said, "Wow, that is one heck of a great instrument, machine." Rather, by the way, just as an aside, Elon, I know you listen to the show. One thing we'd like you to do, you can figure this out. Figure out how to get AM radio on your Teslas, all right? Because, you know, our show, AM, mostly AM, some FMs, but some AMs. That's what you should do. Okay, so, you know, whiny. Let's get a committee. Let's study stuff. Let's do a report. Let's stop this guy from creating great companies in America. Are you kidding me? And look, I think there may be some regulatory annoyances that Musk is looking to address. Like, you know, the SEC wants him to, I don't know, to give him a whole bunch of money in the next 48 hours or they're going to go after him. Beyond ridiculous. Look, the courts in Delaware have already created a problem for him. But the guy is interested in fixing America. The key part of America is, Senator Warren, have you looked at the budget lately? Have you looked at the deficit? Have you noticed something about it? Like, oh, I don't know. It's $36 trillion and increasing by $1 trillion every 100 days. You had a lot to do with that. We are going to go bankrupt as a country unless we stop that spending. And that's really the key focus of what Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are about. Now, that's one way of thinking. Another way of thinking, the newer way of thinking, is encompassed by Congressman Chip Roy from Texas, because he's trying to cut spending while all of the swamp is trying to extend it. Here we have clip 20. He's talking about the continuing resolution pork mess that's up there. Here we go.
Of course. I mean, it's just swamp's going to swamp, right? 1,400 pages. Still haven't seen the text. Multiple subject matters. important healthcare legislation in the context of extenders piled on the back of a 3-month CR with about 110 billion unpaid for, 25 billion in healthcare policy, half of which is fake pay for, being sold that is paid for because they're gimmicks and shuffling around the decks. Things like E15, which we didn't even have a full debate on. This is not the way to do business, right? And so, we said we'd do something different. And since we've been given the majority again, we're adding 330 billion in literally totally unpaid for additional deficit spending just since November 5th in 45 days. I don't see how that's doing what we're supposed to be doing.
How much of the blame falls on the speaker?
Yeah, I mean, right now we'll keep trying to move forward. The conference itself owns this, right? And the conference needs to decide whether we're actually serious about spending. And they talk about, well, we got to do mandatory spending reform and bend the curve. But we just voted on a $200 billion shift of dollars in Social Security that's going to shorten the time when Social Security expires or goes bankrupt. We're just fundamentally unserious about spending. And as long as you got a blank check, you can't shrink government. If you can't shrink government, you can't live free.
Okay, there we go. That's the bottom line. That's what you should be focused on, Senator Warren. Stopping the ridiculous spending, not whining about the fact that Elon Musk, the wealthiest guy in the world, is talking and hanging out with President Trump. Hey, when we come back, a spicy story out of Iowa. President Trump is, remember that pollster that was way off? A publishing poll the day before the election? He's suing her for consumer fraud. Matt Kittle, who lives in Des Moines, will be joining us to talk about that. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy.
My fellow Americans, I was this close, very close, to buying from the lumber yards. These are sick people. But I turned my head at the last second, and I saw a big, beautiful ad for D.T. McCall's. These are highly respected people. If I had not turned my head at the last second, I would have been ripped off at some lumber yard for $200 in hidden charges, and D.T. McCall and Sons are never going to do that. They'd never do that to you. These are great people. I've known them for a long time. They have great deals, and I just have to say, nobody knows deals like I do. D.T. McCall & Sons has locations in Lebanon, Carthage, Lafayette, Cookeville, and Franklin, and they have been family-owned in Middle Tennessee for over 100 years. These are tremendous people. D.T. McCall & Sons. Check out one of their stores today.
Impersonator not endorsed by Donald Trump.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. We are joined on our Newsmaker line right now by one of our favorite guests, formerly with us at the Star News Network, now reports for the Federalist, a terrific reporter, a terrific radio broadcaster and host, living in Des Moines, Iowa, Mr. Matt Kittle. Matt, welcome.
Well, my friend, Merry Christmas to you and yours.
Matt, I just love this story.
It is something, isn't it?
So, as you know, and we talked about this when the poll came out. So the day before the election, Ann Seltzer, who, I don't know, for 20, 25 years was like the esteemed pollster in Iowa, and had worked for the Des Moines Register for many years and then became their pollster. The Des Moines Register is sort of the relic legacy media newspaper owned by Gannett in Des Moines, which also owns the paper formerly known as the Tennessean, now known as basically, a bit of a rag here in Nashville. So she puts this poll out the day before the election. Most polls had shown that Donald Trump had a very healthy lead in Iowa over Kamala Harris. And in her poll, she shows Kamala Harris leading Trump by 3 points in Iowa. And this, of course, sent shockwaves around the country. Oh, the esteemed Ann Seltzer has a state that was not considered a battleground state going to Kamala Harris. But on election day, what were the actual results there, Matt?
They weren't the results that the gold standard, as she is called, Ann Seltzer predicted or projected in her poll. She had Trump behind Kamala Harris by 3 percentage points in deep red Iowa. She was off by about 16 percentage points. Trump took Iowa by 13%, which was a surprise to no one, including, I believe, Ann Seltzer and the rag of the Des Moines Register, which, just like the rest of the Gannett papers across the country, is nothing more than Pravda press for the left in this country, and understandably so. The president-elect and his supporters, particularly in Iowa, were outraged by this poll that was the outlier of all outliers. But then you had, the usual suspects on the left, including at the Des Moines Register, believing their own poll, or at least selling their own poll, and saying, wow, this could be problematic for Trump and the Republicans. Maybe the red wave isn't going to show up as some had suspected. And so now you have this lawsuit about election interference, and one can understand the argument.
Now, what's interesting about this, the lawsuit was filed in Polk County, Iowa. That's what Des Moines, that's Des Moines county seat, right?
Yep, exactly.
But it was under a state law, not a federal law, under the Iowa Consumer Fraud Act. I think that's pretty clever to do it under a state consumer fraud law. I'm guessing, Matt, that in your vast career of reporting, you haven't reported many stories that feature the Iowa Consumer Fraud Act.
Yeah, from time to time, and I'd have to really look back in my years and years ago when I was a young pup of a reporter at the Dubuque Telegraph-Herald. As a business reporter and editor, I remember a couple of stories, but certainly not involving consumer fraud in a presidential election. That's for sure.
Now, the usual suspects on the left are not at all saying that this has any chance. Now, there's this guy out of California, Professor Hansen, at one of the lefty universities there, says, "Oh, not a chance." The problem is, a law professor in California is not particularly familiar with either Iowa statutes or Iowa courts. I think this may have more legs than all of the national experts say. Your thoughts on that?
I think you're right. I think it's a tough hill to climb. I mean, I don't deny that fact, but knowing the statute, it really is about fraudulent activity perpetrated on the consumer. And the consumer in this case is the Iowa voter. And solely the Iowa voter. We could make an argument that the victim, the consumer victim, was nationally the voter, because a lot of folks will argue, including yours truly, that was the intent. The intent was to stir this story up, this false story up, about how deep red state Iowa, a state, by the way, that has a supermajority. I mean, the Republicans control everything from the governor's mansion to the legislature in big numbers, and including their congressional delegation as well. And it has become increasingly red, but more than that, increasingly Trump country over the last several years. And so, everybody in the state of Iowa, including the most delusional left, was like, are you kidding me? This is an indefensible poll. And so, you can make the argument that this was a fraud perpetrated on the people of Iowa for sure.
So here's, I've gone to Elon Musk's AI, Grok. I'm at Grok 2. And here's what I asked Grok.
Congratulations, by the way. Congratulations.
I've asked, what is the Iowa Consumer Fraud Act? The act aims to prevent businesses from engaging in fraudulent, deceptive, or unfair practices that might lead consumers during sales, or that might mislead consumers during sales or advertising. The elements of a claim. To bring a claim under this act, a consumer must prove that there was an unfair practice, deception, false promise, misrepresentation, or similar act, wait for it, with the intent that others rely upon it, leading to an ascertainable loss of money or property. Well, that one, probably not. But deception, oh yeah.
Yeah. And the issue ultimately is standing. The president can, file this lawsuit. His campaign can file this lawsuit, but they're going to need an Iowan, I think, ultimately, for this to move forward. But at the end of the day, if they can get the pollster, the gold standard pollster, and the newspaper that funded this poll deposed, and can go through the discovery process.
Yeah.
Something tells me, like ABC and George Stephanopoulos, they don't want to go through that process.
If this case makes it past the first level, if the Polk County judge looking at this says, okay, let's go to the next step, then there will be depositions, and the embarrassing questions will be, because you've done polls, you've looked at polls, you've read polls, we've all read polls, but there's a methodology that has to be documented.
Right.
Can you imagine the deposition there? Now, what was your universe here of voters? How did you select it?
Lots of interesting questions. I talked to our good mutual friend, John McLaughlin, who is a pollster for the Trump campaign. And, I think he would be very interested in that round of discovery and depositions.
What are the Iowa courts like? They're not California courts. Tennessee courts are, I think, pretty straightforward. What are Iowa courts like? How will the judge respond to this?
I have conservatives on the benches. It can be mixed, of course, and if it's in Polk County, that could be problematic, but there are more conservatives, certainly in Polk County, than there are in the larger metro blue state areas. The Supreme Court, and I don't know if it'll get there or not, it has a conservative edge and advantage, although at times the conservatives have voted with the liberal justices on the court. So there's an opportunity here, I think, that some are shrugging off maybe too soon.
What was the public reaction to this filing of a lawsuit? I imagine people in Iowa are saying, well, this will be fun. Let's see what happens. But what are you hearing? I think we've okay, go ahead. We lost you there a bit, but go ahead.
Oh, sorry about that. Yeah, but I think in talk radio for sure. I work at WHO in Des Moines, and talk radio has been very supportive. The listeners therein, who were surprised first and foremost about this poll to begin with. So they're saying turnabout is fair play.
I think what we're going to see, I think the judge will let it go to the next step. I think you're exactly right. Then they'll have depositions. I think there will be a settlement before they get to the depositions, because I don't think Ann Seltzer wants to reveal her methodology, because it's gonna show, I think, that this was a completely fraudulent poll.
Well, John McLaughlin, as I mentioned before, believes that Ann Seltzer came in with a poll, and things might have been changed or manipulated because it didn't fit the narrative that the Des Moines Register was looking for. We don't know that for sure. We don't know that, but certainly depositions and discovery would answer some very serious questions. So I think you're absolutely right, my friend, that this could go the way of ABC News and George Stephanopoulos, and maybe we'll get some more cash to the Presidential Library Fund.
I love that. Matt Kittle, I love it when we have a fun story to talk about. Thanks so much for joining us today.
I do as well. Merry Christmas to you and yours, my friend.
All right, Merry Christmas, Matt. We'll have more when we get back. The great Matt Kittle. Back after this. Oh, and there's some breaking news from the United States Supreme Court. You're going to love it. Back after this.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. Hey, we've got some breaking news. And this is why you listen to this show, because you get breaking news all the time. We are plugged in. We are on X. And by the way, that's the news source that matters, because you can get raw data up there and you can analyze it for yourself. But X is a place to get all the breaking news. This is where I saw this. It's actually 20 minutes old. I'm going to use here a report from CNN, asterisk. But, okay, this is what we have. Headline: Supreme Court agrees to hear case over TikTok ban. Remember TikTok? Which is primarily owned by the Chinese, but a billionaire out of Philadelphia, I think his name is Jeffrey Yass, owns about 16% of it. Here's the story. The Supreme Court on Wednesday agreed to decide whether a controversial ban on the social media app TikTok violates the First Amendment, adding a major case to its docket this term just before President-elect Donald Trump takes office. The High Court agreed to expedite the case and hear arguments on January 10th. TikTok's appeal to the Supreme Court thrust the justices into a high-profile fight between Congress, which has cited national security concerns over China's control of the app, and the platform's users and executives who argue the ban violates the First Amendment. Now, what are we talking about here? Well, Congress passed the ban with bipartisan support earlier this year, and President Joe Biden signed this into law in April. It came in response to years of concern in Washington that TikTok's Chinese parent company poses a national security risk. Well, earlier this month, a federal appeals court in Washington, D.C., unanimously upheld the ban in a ruling that said the government had a national security interest in regulating the platform in the United States. That's all true. And it's also true that TikTok is very popular, A. B, that all of the data on TikTok is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. These are all two things. These are all two things that are true. And there is a national security interest here. However, I think we need to point out TikTok is extraordinarily popular. And I think there was a poll done of people age 18 to 35. Should TikTok be banned? Asterisk. We'll get to that here in a bit. And like 70% said no. And then for senior citizens, I suppose I'm a senior citizen. Really? Anyways, people over a certain age, shall we say. I guess people over 55. What's the definition of senior citizen over 65? Anyways, people over 55, the majority said, yeah, it should be banned. So here's the thing. It's incredibly popular. And as a format, it's a very popular format. You get these 2-minute, 1 minute, 15-second videos that are funny, and people want to watch them. Young people want to watch them. That's for sure. And I have to say, the Trump campaign learned how to use TikTok to its advantage, and it influenced the votes of younger people. So what's to be done here? Well, I think, let me tell you what I think the public policy issue is here. This should not be owned by the Chinese. There is a national security interest here. But we should have a forced sale. The Chinese should be forced to sell it to Americans. That's a public policy decision. Kevin O'Leary, the guy you see in Shark Tank, has volunteered to buy it. Now, I don't know how valuation and all that sort of stuff is a challenge, but I think the right answer here, I think the technology, TikTok is here to stay, asterisk. It should not be owned by the Chinese. It should be owned by Americans, right? And already this Jeffrey Yass guy, and I think I've got his name right. We'll correct it in the next hour if I've got it wrong. A billionaire out of Philadelphia owns about 16% of it. Well, okay, let him own. Let's get Americans to buy it. That is, I think, the right solution. What will the Supreme Court do on this? Well, it's interesting that the appeals court was unanimous in their decision to uphold the ban. That's the law. That's how it works. It's a statute. Is it a First Amendment violation? I don't think so. But I think, what do I think the Supreme Court will do? Well, I don't know what the Supreme Court will do, right? Because hard to predict, and we've got the Broadway LGBTQ phenom, debutante, Ketanji Brown Jackson there, and yet Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan. The two of those three just don't have any common sense whatsoever. But so what do I think the court should do? Well, to just shut it down would create all sorts of chaos in social media and some political reactions that aren't good. But I do think that what they would probably say is, well, the Congress, the law is not unconstitutional because these national security interests are true. I think what they'll do is they'll sort of punt. They'll give it I think they'll give a year, this would be my guess. Or they would recommend an extended period of time to execute the sale from the Chi-Coms to Americans. And I think they'll probably recommend that Congress pass a law to that effect. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't think, because what's going to happen is they're going to have to shut it down. January 11th, January 12th. I'm just going to tell you right now, they're not going to shut down TikTok. That is not going to happen because the political ramifications will be just too much. And the Supreme Court realizes that there is a fix here. I think the intelligent adults on the Supreme Court will come up with that fix. But we'll see. I've been surprised before. That's it for this hour. When we come back, it'll be the Tennessee Bonus Hour with Crom Carmichael. Remember, watch us at TennesseeStar.com, TennesseeStar.com. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy.